Should come up.
Yeah, it's in the corner. It's just come up. It's recorded.
Yeah, I can see it.
So, Brynhando pawb, croeso I Alfod heddiw. Hello and welcome to Merthyr Canterbury Council Social Services Scrutiny Committee on Tuesday, the 16th of January 2024. Please note that this meeting may be recorded and broadcast via the authority's internet site, and the images and sound recording may also be used for any training purposes. So with that, we will go to item 1, which is apologies for absence.
Yes, Chair, apologies from Councillor Louise Nidvaux and Councillor Ian Thomas.
Thank you. Item 2, we go to declarations of interest. So has anyone got any declarations? So agenda item 3 is the budget report. So scrutiny requests of the budget report to be considered under the current position, and Councillor Julie Jenkins is going to introduce the report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. It's the budget report for Scrutiny Committee. The summary report. Scrutiny members requested an update on the social services budget. We are currently on month 9, December the 23rd. December 23. The month 07 position has been reported to date, which is included in this report. The cost of living crisis and higher costs of commissioned services have impacted significantly on some budget lines. The recommendations are that the content of this report be discussed and noted. Thanks, Chair.
So with that, I will ask, are there any questions? No?
Well, I don't think we saw.
So do you want me to go through the report?
Thank you so much. Yes, you can.
Okay. So the format of the report goes through like previous meetings. So I've just highlighted the budget position, which was the one that was formally reported, which was month 7. So I appreciate we are 2 months behind, but it gives you a flavour of where we're at. So the budget you'll see is up to the 31st of October 2023. You know that our budget is unpredictable, and you know it can depend on the cohort of children looked after and the number of adults requiring support with their support needs. Where we were, I think just a reminder really, we've been in a fortunate position, if that's the right word, over the last 2 or 3 years, in that we've been supported by significant grants because of COVID. So we had recovery monies, and that's helped us sort of invest and have some innovative ways of working within children's services and adult services, because we've been able to put extra resources in. But obviously that was time limited, so that's now coming to an end. We ended the financial year 22-23 in a positive position, so we were able to sort of look at some reserves on that basis. We've been supported with regional funding, so it used to be called the Integrated Care Fund. It's now the Regional Integrated Fund. So you'll hear phrases like RIF, because that's what we're talking about, the regional fund. Where we are now, so 5.1 gives you what the budget position is at 31st of October 2023. So there's several pages there outlining the spend. And then 5.2 is the report outlines the major variances. And I guess they are the areas you'll probably want to ask questions on, and that's through adults and children's services. So there are some underspends and there are some overspends, but overall the budget was in a 374 underspend position at month 7. And then that's the several pages of the variances. Just to sort of highlight, and you know, if you've got questions about this, I'm sure Joe can answer them better than myself. But at 5.4 of the report, Albert Heaney, the Chief Social Care Officer for Wales, wrote to all local authorities outlining the Welsh Government commitment to the eliminate profit agenda. So that is in respect of looked after children, so that companies can't make profit on our children looked after. So that you'll see sort of the placement strategy that's come to council is looking at us developing our own residential placements, and that's having a major impact on perhaps some of the independent fostering agencies that we've got and some of the out-of-county residential, because costs are escalating, and plus we are struggling to find placements for some of our perhaps lower need children, whereas in the past we've used foster placements or IFAs. Then lots of people are stepping away from that role at the present time. Where we want to be, then clearly we want to have a balanced budget at the end of the financial year, and as at the present time we are looking at the medium-term financial plan for next year and the year after. So that's currently the work we're doing with Stacey, our accountant. And then what we're doing is regular meetings. We're obviously a part of the partnership work. We're working with our neighbouring authorities about what we can do regionally. So there's lots of discussions around that. And then obviously as that develops, we'd bring that back to scrutiny or council or cabinet. We're reviewing the demands regularly around children and adult services. And I suppose the reminder really that safeguarding will always be a priority. So that comes first as opposed to budget, because it's really important that we safeguard children and adults where we can. So happy to answer any questions.
What I was going to ask on the first page, it says deprivation of liberty services, £65,000. What do you spend the £65,000 on? Deprivation of liberty. It comes and it's half.
Dollars.
So that would be for the cost of the assessments. I believe that's the budget line for that. So we've got a joint arrangement with RCT. So that's our contribution, because obviously that's funding the staff then who do the assessments around the deprivation of liberty.
Oh, so we were saying about if you want to take a phone off a child, you have to get them assessed.
No. So these are the sort of like older people who are in residential care that can't look after themselves. So we're saying that they're assessed that they have to remain in the in that placement.
Oh,
they might say I want to go home, but we're saying no, you can't, because you can't meet your needs because of medical reasons. And similarly with children, like a 16-year-old potentially, we would have a dolls in place if they were in a secure placement and they couldn't leave that placement without a staff member being with them. So that is around that legislative sort of assessment that needs to take place.
Paying for the social workers or whatever to do the assessments. Yeah. Oh, that's interesting.
Yes.
Just one, Chair.
Thank you, Declan.
Lisa, it's a quick question for yourself. At Appendix 3, it gives the variances, the year-end projections. Year-end projections, where it's got and the variance. That's not the total year, is it? Is that just a variance from looking back since October until the financial year?
The projected spend to the end of the year.
Yeah.
So, but at month 7, this is where we're at. So, for example, if we had another child in residential, the variance would change in the next 5 months if that happened. But if the current service remains as is on the day that this was printed, then that's the predicted spend that we'd have for the year, and the variance would be that.
Okay. Is there a big difference since the start of the year? The budget you started out with that everyone knew about at the beginning of the year to what you project now? Will that be a much bigger variance?
It's probably, I mean, it has increased because obviously the residential, as the fees have gone up. So the charges that we've opened our own residential. So obviously there were costs that we had to build in for that. So there has been some movement. Our 2 care homes are now full. And whereas I think back last year we had vacancies. So, there's been variance because of that. So the budget has moved slightly.
Obviously, we're coming up to the new financial year, and we'll be voting on everything, savings and council tax and that sort of thing. What have you seen over the last 12 months, and what do you predict for the next 12 months are the biggest? What's going to cost the council the most, to be honest?
Well, I mean, the obvious answer there is it'll be the children looked after budget. That's where the pressures are. We obviously we've committed to the Eliminate Profit project through Welsh Government that we are opening our own residential. We haven't had our own residential for a number of years, certainly not since I've been here, and I've been here for 9-10 years. So that's new to us. So that's something that we've had to build into the budget. Although we've had some grant monies for that to move forward from Welsh Government, it's not going to be enough to cover the full cost because although we've got, I think we've got 2 now, both there's got more than one placement. If you've got a child with complex needs and you can't place a child alongside it, you know, that's not, the budget needs to increase then, because potentially, well, you've budgeted for 2 children, you're suddenly only paying for 1 child. So it's a fine art really, trying to balance the books, but that's our big pressure. That's the fact that whereas there are some children that may have come into sort of the care system and gone into an independent fostering placement, some of those children are now going into residential because there's no resource there at the minute.
Okay, 2 follow-up questions. Obviously, Welsh Government don't want private companies to make money, but will this cost the council money? Or will the service, will the costs stay the same?
I think for us, it's about trying to manage it as best we can. What it will do is improve, hopefully, some outcomes for young people in that, because we have no residentials of our own, we're tending to place our children, if they need residential, out of county. So therefore, we're having to access support, not necessarily in Merthyr, and sometimes quite far afield. I mean, for example, Kent. So if we can place our children locally, then they're receiving support from the health board more, you know, on the doorstep. They'd have an education provided by Merthyr. So in theory, we may make some saving, but then the real priority for us is making sure that young person has the best outcome.
Okay, you answered my second question. It was, will the service be better for our children looked after? Yeah, it will. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Salmon. Councillor Gareth Richards.
Thank you, Chair. It's on the variances, really. A couple of questions, Lisa, if that's right with you. The first one is regarding the residential homes. Any movement since the explanation that's been given in the report about staff recruitment, etc.? Has anything improved in that area? Perhaps one for Angela, perhaps, is there?
I know that we've recently recruited some of the vacancies. I'm not sure if the figure has changed because I can't recall. I've seen month 9, but I don't know whether Angela can update on that.
Yeah, thanks. What we've seen is a real sort of piece of work looking at the sickness absences and people working within residential services, and the manager's been working quite actively to deal with that. What we've seen from that is the staff have been leaving and sickness arrangements or choosing to leave. And then what you get is gaps in employment for short periods. So obviously when someone leaves, by the time you advertise the post and then recruit into the post, so what you are seeing is some gaps from the recruitment. But I think pretty much at the moment, most of the vacancies are now filled across the older person's services.
Thanks, Angela. That's fine. The other one then is obviously regarding the residential, and I think the comment in here that you are working towards developing extra provision. Is that any of that then across joint working with other authorities, or is it purely our county borough?
Right, so Jo can add to this, she's probably better positioned than me to answer it, but we've developed 2 of our own in-house provisions. They are just for our children at the minute, yeah. Albeit if we did have a vacancy, the agreement is that we would offer that out to either RCT or Bridgend if they required that. There are plans to look at a regional facility because that's obviously a Welsh Government initiative. They want us to work together as a region, and that's the purpose of the RIF funding, it being a regional partnership. So there is so we've had discussions about looking at a sort of a regional approach for children with sort of high-end complex needs. Bridgend have just opened a residential. I think it's a 4 or 5 bed unit, and obviously again, if they've got vacancies, they will offer them to Merthyr or RCT, rather than have sort of vacancies within that arena. Yeah. And that would be the agreement we've got, because we're working as a region on those plans. Yeah.
As a follow-up with Ali, so we've heard about this joint working for quite a number of years now, really, to develop a more specialised facility that would serve regionally. So are there working groups, etc., dealing with that at the moment? Because we've been told that a number of years, and perhaps we could have a report to tell us exactly what is where we are on the road to that.
I agree with that. Councillor Richards, I agree.
I think that the difficulty is, I mean, I appreciate that there's been discussion for a long time, and I know the previous chief exec was quite keen to explore, you know, having something as a regional approach within, and wanted Merthyr to host it, because that was something he was keen on previously. At the moment, because Eliminate Profit is at the stage where we, you know, had to look at opening our own homes, that was the priority.
Yeah.
So the regional project, if you like, or a home hasn't sort of come to fruition yet. There are discussions going on. So underneath the regional partnership board, you've got two boards. One is adult board, one is children's board. And then there are subgroups under that. And there is a subgroup that's specifically looking at residential and what we need. And then with some of the grant funding that's coming through, there are set criteria. And obviously part of that is making sure we are working in a regional way. So it's not just, you know, Merthyr on their own, RCT on their own, Bridgend on their own. We are looking at a regional approach. So do you sit on any of those groups, Joe, that you can expand on that?
Yeah, so in terms of working with Bridgend, so they're opening their home and, you know, they would offer us beds, but the problem is the young person or young people perhaps that got in can't match with other children at the moment because of the complexity of the behaviours. So there are regional sort of homes that were open for the region to perhaps purchase, you know, beds and things. That just the challenges is trying to match young people in there, and that's they just literally the RCT have got some that we could look at accessing. We just can't match our children into those placements. Yeah. That's the complexity at the moment. So I know RCT are looking at driving forward a regional home, and they're looking at driving, but again, you know, there's so many homes being opened by everybody at the moment. We're really struggling to work through it. So it's there, it's being thought of, and we're certainly looking at doing that work. It's just matching children's really, really hard.
Yeah. Perhaps not pursue that any further at this stage. We may discuss it as members, perhaps to bring on the programme of work, perhaps further down the line into next year.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
I mean, it might be a sort of a timely, because obviously we're talking about another project which will be bigger for us, and then obviously I think the funding for that is 2025. So, you know, perhaps towards the end of this year, beginning of the next year, we can update you further on that.
Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you so much, Councillor Richard.
What age do children leave the foster system now? Is it 16 or 18?
It can depend. So if we support a young care leaver till they up to 25. But obviously
in the foster home.
So at 18 they're fostered. From 18 plus they can stay with our carer and when I'm ready. And then obviously they remain in education, or we would support them to live independently if that was felt to be the next steps. And some of them, obviously, some with more complex needs might step into the adult world where they would go into supported living arrangements. So it does depend on the individual case.
What sort of percentage stop on with the foster parents then after 18? Do you know?
It's not high at the moment.
No, it's not
at the moment, but we're really starting to pursue that. So I think only last week we had a conversation about when I'm ready and looking into, you know, our policies, our systems, and are we really promoting it with our care leavers?
So like the home then, like, you know, thanks.
I've got some questions, obviously, with Councillor Minute-Vokes not here today. She's asked me to ask some questions as well, so I sort of integrated the two lots because we were very similar with some of our questions. With Councillor Minute-Vokes' first question, she was looking at the children looked after court, legal and professional services. So her question was in relation to these services, such as DNA and drug testing. She was asking, are we able to reduce the costs? You know, has to be a comparative exercise put in place where potentially it could go out to tender. She doesn't use the word tender, but it's something that if we just use in one company and their costs could be relatively high, have we looked at other companies that potentially offer exactly the same who could offer it to us at the lowest rate?
I think that's a question we've been asked in previous scrutinies and something we've been challenged on before. The difficulty is often is the court direct to us who we use, and obviously they've got a bit of a monopoly because I don't think there's that many companies out there that are doing this type of testing.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of the problem. What I will say is we do look at that budget line quite regularly, whether or not, you know, it's sort of put against the right budget line. Sometimes we have to use barristers in court, so obviously that's an issue. We've sometimes in the past have to pay parenting assessments. But what we have done is we've now got an assessment role within the family support team, so that will prevent some of the cost with regards to us paying for assessments externally. So in the longer term, hopefully we'll see a reduction then in some of that.
Okay. The next question was budget head 2. So it was around the Murder Tidwell County Borough Council homes for the elderly. So the question basically is there a common trend in relation to staff being on long-term sick and underlying problems that also need to be addressed? So Louise has given an example of burnout, poor mental health and well-being against the frontline staff. And then she's asking what happens if recruitment is unsuccessful, as temporary can sometimes be longer. So
I mean, I think what we're probably seeing now is the aftermath of COVID, where, you know, those staff were in, you know, on a daily basis, you know, they couldn't work from home, they had to be in work. Yeah. And a lot of staff, there was a high level of sickness afterwards. And we're now rebuilding, if you like, some of the staff base within the units. There's been new managers in both of our T Gurnos and T Bargoed. Brought some really new and innovative ideas. I mean, you only have to go up there to see, you know, to see the changes over the last 2 years. So I think some people have chosen to leave, they've moved on to other jobs, and we're now sort of unpicking that. So we're starting to recruit and we've been quite successful at that. So hopefully we'll start seeing improvement in. Christy, who's the new principal officer, or relatively new, is, you know, quite dynamic and is really pushing the service. So we got some new ideas for T Gurnos, for example, which we'll share with you in due course once that's been formally agreed. And hopefully you'll see some improvement in that budget line.
So another thing then is there enough resilience to ensure that how the homes are staffed and operating effectively?
I think at the moment we are still heavily reliant on agency. So it would be wrong for me to say we've got a lot of resilience in there, but we are, touch wood, we are able to, you know, bring in new agency, and we tend to use the same ones so they know the area, know the home.
Yeah.
So touch wood, we're okay for that.
Yeah. So moving forward, budget head 7. My concern with budget head 7 was the word operating without regulation. Obviously that was, to me, that stood up. And I was massively concerned about that. So, you know, for me to see that, what are you doing about that with the operating without regulation and with the CIW? Because realistically, the Head Inspector at Wales do come in and regulate things as well. So I'm a bit confused on that one. So I'm just wondering whether you can just help me on that.
Okay, so I'll add something, you can add something. So obviously we don't want, you know, operating without regulations. You know, we want to make sure children are in regulated placements, and we want them to be safe. However, if we need a placement and we need to safeguard a child, then we will create, if you like, an unregulated placement if we feel that's the only option we've got. Opening the 2 care homes, that as obviously will assist us in, you know, moving forward, so that will be helpful. CIW obviously are taking quite, you know, strong action against local authorities, or at least that's been you know, if we've got operating regulations. I think we've got one at the minute, but it's in the process of being regulated because the RI is going through the process, and I've done the reference, so that's just timing really more than anything. But yeah, where we can, we won't have them. But, you know, we are doing our best to observe and sort of review those, but I'll hand over to Joe.
Yeah, so when I first started, we did have, I think, 3 or 4 at that time. So we were down to 0 towards the end of last year. the one we've got is our home that we're registering. So it's the paperwork is in with CIW to register. I regularly update them. So it started Friday. So we'd gone through the whole Christmas period in sort of December without one. So I sent paper into CIW last week to say this, notify them that we've got one, and then I'll send updates every Friday to CIW to keep them up to date. And honestly, we work really well. I think as long as they know what's going on, know that we've got the staffing and not the processes, we're running the home as if it was regulated. So in terms of all the paperwork and the systems, all that would be exactly the same as when we had the registration. So that, you know, we're making sure we're safeguarding that child in terms of that. So yeah, we're hopeful that we won't have to have them. But as Lisa said, we do when we really have to, but we fight against it because, you know, they're not our staff, they're using agency staff, and that makes me feel uncomfortable that we're not have the same oversight over them as we do our regulated homes. But yeah, we've worked really hard, teams have worked really hard to reduce those numbers down.
Yeah, so when you just said, are you able to tell us who the RI is? Is RI somebody working with our social services or?
Yeah, so our RI will be Jo Rees-Jones.
Okay.
We recruited to that post, so she's registering with CIW.
Yeah,
but it's quite a lengthy process to get her through and things. So as she's registering so at the moment we're registering her and the home at the same time. It's all the same sort of similar paperwork. So it's going in. So every time we're adding more and more information and documents. You know, building regulations. We're hoping to get back next week to send those through for the home. Yeah, it's technical, isn't it? You have lots of different areas. It's not just the policies and the systems. It's all the building work as well.
Yeah, what is the recruitment like at the moment for the looked after children? Because I check our site quite regularly to see if the jobs are still up there, and they've never come down.
So in terms of that home, so that residential home, we've got I think one night care vacancy at the moment out, but the rest of the posts are filled.
So they do waking nights there?
There is a waking night and a sleep.
So the other thing that Councillor Vokes has asked is what alternative provision has been looked at focusing on a particular teenager with complex needs. So so if you've got somebody with complex needs that you were feeling that we're unable, who's unsuitable for anything at the moment, what are your alternative at the minute?
I mean, the reality is if we've got a child with any needs, we would fill in the relevant paperwork and then we work with 4Cs who obviously help us to find external placements, and we would look for an external placement. If they couldn't find that and we needed to place today, then potentially we'd have to look at an unregulated placement if we felt there was no other option, but it would be the last resort.
Yeah, okay. The next question, mine was mainly on the children's residential, but the next question for Councillor Vokes is 5.3. So she's asking, can you please expand on what develop our own resources means and how will this assist with financial challenges and placement costs? 5.3, please.
Okay, so the obviously the development of our own resources is just the reference to the two residential homes that we're opening. So one opened last summer, I want to say, was it July? Yeah, I think it was just before you started, wasn't it?
It's my first week. So
yeah,
July. You gave me that joy, my first week.
And the second one opened last week. So that's the development of our own resources. Reference there. Obviously we've got to build that monies into the budget. There is some support, so we've had the limited profit grant through that will cover some of the costs for that, but equally what we're looking at is if we bring children back into county, then in theory their budget moves back with them.
Yeah,
so you know there will be some movement in the budget because of that.
Thank you. The next question is relating to 5.5, and so you mentioned the word ambitious. Does this mean that this may not be realistic?
I guess we're a small local authority, or sorry, compact and easier, I should say, not small. So it's difficult if we've got a number of children with complex needs, then we've only got a finite resource. So we have to be realistic about what we can do, and I think that's where the regional plan comes in, where, you know, if need be, we would look at, you know, using resources in Bridgend or RCT if that was deemed appropriate.
Okay. Louise's next question is 6.3. So I'm going to read it how she said it because I'd like her words to come across, and I hope I do her justice. She says, I think the most important thing to remember is that each of the numbers represents a child, a person, somebody's loved one, and that this area cannot be black and white, and that there will always be a grey area, and unpredictably, when working with and supporting adults and children, it is difficult when looking at predictions and speculations that could change. What assurances are there that safeguarding needs and services will still be met if unbudgeted demands, such as an increase on predictions, happen, and that the service has resilience and remains consistent?
Would you like me to give it to you to read?
Good question. And I don't disagree with what Councillor Minette both said. The reality is safeguarding is our priority. If we had a child in need, you know, who's needs a safe, vulnerable child today or a vulnerable adult, they would be priority, and we'd have to, you know, meet their needs, you know, to the best of our ability, regardless of budget. I would have to make sure that we could do that. That's what my role as the statutory director. You know, I certainly don't sit in this role and think, oh, I'm going to worry about, you know, budgets. I do worry about budgets, but you know, the person is the priority. And you know, we all came into this job. I'm a qualified social worker. Jo is, and she's got a health background. You know, we come in here to, you know, provide people with the right resources. It is difficult. We've got to look at the budget, but obviously we're looking at it in the lens of we have to make sure that adults and children are safeguarded. So that is our priority when we're looking at, you know, all the budget lines, and that would what I'd be arguing. And when we bring things to council for you to make agreement or not, I will highlight the risk where I feel that, you know, yes, we can make the saving, but this is the risk that there would be if we, you know, took that out of the budget, and that's all I can do.
And I've got to say, with you saying all that, to hear how passionate you are about safeguarding is very reassuring. And I wish others, because as you know, social services, you know, a lot of parents and people who are in with social services are like poo-poo. But I just think knowing that regardless, it's the safeguarding that you're looking at is, I commend you for that. So well done. Thank you ever so much. 7.1 now, please. Going forward, is there an option the overspend areas being looked at in a task and finish group, which scrutiny can investigate a particular financial issue and look in more depth and scope for efficiency and suggest improvements?
If scrutiny feel that they can assist with that, then great. I mean, it's certainly something we do regularly with Stacey, our accountant. And we've met this morning on residential, for example, because obviously we're looking at setting the right budget for next year. But any assistance is welcome.
Yeah. So is that something we set up, please, Jane? Thank you. 7.4. We come to the end. Can you give some examples of what some of these invest to save projects are, please?
Oh, no, that's the.
I'm going to take credit for a lot of these. You look back today. Sorry, Louise.
I suppose a lot of it is obviously that we're looking at the setting up our own resources for the own residential. So there's a lot of investment in there that we hope that will help, you know, better outcomes for young people and, you know, make some savings. We've got a project in Tigurnos where we're hopefully going to have some regional funding to develop some step up, step down beds where we're not using particular beds at Tigurnos. So hopefully that will come to fruition in the next couple of weeks because the funding has to be made available by the end of March. And that will potentially help us in the longer term, that we could look at bringing people back into county closer to home and, you know, look at making savings there. I mean, that's just two examples really from children and adults. Anything else, Angela or Jo, you want to add?
There is probably the parenting assessor role that you said earlier, which hopefully will reduce the legal budget, but is utilising a post. We've already, you know, a budget in the post already. So hopefully that will help to reduce. I think that would be one. looking at some of the spending perhaps that we're doing for profit providers, that we're trying to look at doing things in-house. So with children with disabilities, looking at whether we can provide a service in-house that is currently being provided by others, utilising what we've got slightly differently to try and reduce budgets. It's hard to say we're utilising what we've got. So rather than invest to save, it's probably using what we've got slightly differently rather than sort of investing other monies into it. I think that's the problem.
We did invest in 3 trainees last year. Or might have been the year before, time goes so quickly. And we see the benefit of that now by the end of this year, because they're all set to qualify. And then the vacancies that we've struggled to fill in children's services, certainly they'll be coming back to those. So that was a really good investment.
Yeah.
So that was something. Ange, anything to add from adults?
Yeah, it aligns with our maximising the opportunities we have through the RIF. So some of the things we're looking at is, the supported discharge and the D2RA. So we've set up a team that we hope will be more efficient in supporting discharges, and we're utilising the RIF to support that. We're also looking as a region in what we can do for further integration to see if we can maximise in not just the local authority resources, but certainly looking at how health and social care can work together to be more efficient going forward. So some of those are some of the examples we've got on adults. Thanks.
Thank you. And finally, financial statement. The position within Merthyr Tydfil County Borough Council and other local authorities in relation to the year ahead, has the department been asked to make efficiencies, and do you know what areas they may be in? And also, with projects and developments that are in the pipeline, have you had to consider putting things on hold due to the financial settlement?
Any projects that we've already started, we haven't been asked to put those on hold because most of those have been around invest save anyway, so it would be detrimental really if we stopped those. We have got to contribute to the efficiencies for 24-25. I always get the years wrong. And we have got a target to meet, and we are working on that at the minute. And that's all I can say at the minute.
Okay, thank you. Right, so anything else for agenda item 3? Any more questions? No. So if we go to agenda item 4, which is the forward work programme, the only information I've got is that added to the forward work programme and additional items was the progress report on the impact of the changes to how police respond to health checks on vulnerable people.
We've just added that to the forward work plan to look at that.
Right, so you want a report from
it's
ourselves?
for next cycle. I think we're going to look at it in
Next year.
So what was that? Is that on right care, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, I think the police have stopped chasing people that leave the hospital as well.
Yeah, so
So you're controlling
the police. There's a new project called Right Care, Right People. The police there's been 2 or 3 meetings to date. The first one was before Christmas, and we had one subsequently, sort of early January. Safeguarding Board are pulling together a task and finish group, but there's going to be a tier approach, a phased approach to it. So the police are not going to do welfare checks from February onwards, and it builds up into a period of sort of 5 tiers that by the end of the year they won't be going. They've gotten certain calls in relation to mental health calls, but certainly we can provide an update. It will be, providing you with information about what the police have told us, because there hasn't been a consultation. We've been told it's going to happen.
Yes, please, that would be great.
Is that a UK way then? Or
So it was piloted in Humberside some time ago, and it went from there. South Wales Police are now taking it on. I think Gwent have expressed an interest, and there's been pockets of it around the country, but not everywhere. But it looks like it is going to be South Wales Police.
So Item 5, scrutiny referrals that are on.
Chair, can we come back? Can
Yes, you
we
can.
make a decision on that report
Yes, we can.
on, yeah.
Thank you very much,
That's
Councillor
right.
Richard.
If members want it on there, that is, of course.
No,
but,
yeah, yeah.
You know, not perhaps early in the cycle, but perhaps later on
I
in
think
the year
I think
about
so.
a regional working on residential provision. Really, that's it is basically, isn't it? We're ready for.
I've added that to the action, so when we're looking at the cycle for next year,
Yeah.
we can build that into the forward work plan.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Richards, really appreciate it. So with that, we go to item 5. There are no referrals have been received at this stage. Item 6, report recommendations. So this was new for the forward work plan, so complete the column, each item and show. Did we address the recommendations in each report and show impact? There was no need for official formal vote. Just a
Discussion.
Yeah, it was just
Yeah.
a discussion. So are we all happy with that?
Happy, Chair, fine.
Item 7, so we had feedback on scrutiny activities. So we were reported with snakes and ladders. So the report was circulated to members on 14th of December 2023. It should have been emailed, yeah, so we did have that. And a date is yet to be confirmed to visit the NLC, the Neighbourhood Learning Centre, sometime in January 24. So I can see that we're coming towards the end of January now. So it may be that we've got if it can't be done by the end of January, we may have to look.
So we've got that report coming to scrutiny on the 16th of April. And what you normally do is have the visit, obviously, prior to that report.
Yeah.
So if you're happy for me to go away and put some dates in the diary, then I can do it with Lisa and we can perhaps arrange something for.
Can I ask that you send me the remit of our report to see what information scrutiny want?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chair, you know there was going to be the meeting with snakes and ladders. Is
Yes.
that not going to go ahead now because we've had the report sent to us before?
I think unfortunately they had to cancel.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
The meeting, so they sent us the report
Yes.
anyway. But I would like to still visit. I think we just need to all work out the best date for us to go to visit. Because I think all of us wanted to. I know you would express an interest as well as take away. So I would like to visit if that could be arranged at some point.
The plan meeting was they were coming to us, so I think, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So item 8, any other business? I haven't got any.
Oh.
So with that, can I ask that the recording be stopped, please? And thank you ever so much for your time.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair.